tried it, so you don't have to.
You were the talk of the town.
And I was the talk of the town because Patrick pinches butts.
Butt pincher.
Hey guys, welcome to my channel. And happy November 1st. I hope you guys had a great Halloween and was able to watch some scary movies, eat some candy, just enjoy yourselves. As always, I like to kind of read spooky stories, so I thought, why not read a spooky story today, since it's just the day after Halloween. So instead of Edgar Allan Poe stories, which I did for the month of October, I thought I would do another creepypasta story. So why don't you dive right on in with me as we read a creepypasta. The Dating Game, written by Akhenaton, with some modifications by yours truly. I had been single for a while, and I was sick and tired of it. Being single and 32 is no laughing matter. The traumatic experiences of watching your friends get married, have children, and attain the quote-unquote American dream are akin to the hopeless depression of the schizophrenic mental patient. I wanted a wife, I wanted kids, I wanted a steady job. I was tired of working at Burger King and living alone in a studio apartment, so I decided to go out to one of those speed dating events. I picked out my best garb and walked out the door. Keep in mind, I worked at Burger King, so the best clothes I could afford were some mediocre dress shirts and tattered khaki pants I bought at Walmart during a clearance event. I walked into the event trying to display the shred of confidence I had left. I was instantly discouraged when I saw all the other competing males and their Armani suits, high-class whiskey in hand, and auras reeking of nothing but pure self-esteem and conceit. The ladies there were dressed in fine dresses, some of them quite low-cut, and smelled like a flower garden designed by Martha Stewart herself. The speed dating started. The first girl I sat down with was quite young, a 22-year-old mother of 3. She had made a lot of mistakes in her life and seemed far more than I could handle. Right off the bat, she told me about how she was 4 days sober from methamphetamine and was looking to settle down with a nice man who didn't look like a walrus. I spent the next 4 minutes making general small talk, quite literally fearing for my life. Once that buzzer sounded, I rocketed out of my chair with the speed of a gazelle. The next woman was way too old for me. I had thought that these events were age-regulated and had different meetings for people in different stages of life. My decision was finalized as soon as she brought up her grandkids. I can hardly handle one generation of young ones, much less 2. The next woman seemed much more appealing. She was 26 and studying to be a nurse at a local hospital. She loved kids but had none of her own, which was a relief to me. She seemed well kept and stable. I asked her if she'd like my number as the session ended, and she consented. I opened my phone and entered her number as she read it aloud. Smiling at her and thanking her for listening, I got up to the next table. While doing so, I closed my phone by accident and realized that I never saved her number, so it was lost forever. The next table was empty. What a joke. If I wanted to sit and stare at a wall, I would have stayed home. Nothing really to say here. Moving on. The woman I met at the next table was the most interesting of all, but not in a bad way. She had long, flowing dark hair, green eyes, and had this cute smile. Black dress, black shoes, black everything. For someone dressed in such a gothic manner, she had such a bubbly personality. Everything I said made her giggle. She was 27 and currently unemployed. She was married to a husband before, but he had left her after she had a miscarriage. She told me this was common in her family. Therefore, in numerous fits of emotional rage, her ex-husband blamed her for this and left. Too pained by the loss of her husband and unborn child, she moved to the city a few weeks ago and was living on unemployment, unable to continue working at her job due to the crippling depression and panic she suffered as a result of her abandonment. Despite the torment in her life, she never seemed depressed about it. Either she was incredibly optimistic about life, or she was one of the best actresses I had ever seen. Either way, I was willing to take a shot. I asked her if she'd like my number. It turned out that she had some bad meetings at this particular convention herself and wanted to take off to do something more fun. She tossed me an invite, and seeing as I was a lonely 32-year-old man, she didn't have to ask twice. I never understood what she saw in me over all the other guys. I was beaten and broken with no aspirations to better my current situation. Maybe she understood how I felt, considering all the pain she felt herself, and decided to get to know who I really was under this cocoon of emotionless insecurity. I sensed a thread of compassion intertwined between all that stress and trauma, willing to lend an ear to anyone that felt the same pain as her. I was truly transfixed by her presence, drawn to her character. I had never felt like this before. We decided to go to a pool hall. Apparently, she used to be a regular at another pool hall by her old house, winning local tournaments and making a name for herself, and she wanted to check out the scenery here. I wasn't too shabby at the table game myself, so I was excited. Every shot she made was perfect. The balls just sank into the field. Out of the 17 games we played, I think I made around 23 shots. She just kept running the table. It was funny because she kept apologizing for being so good. I waved the apology and complimented her on her skill, causing her to giggle some more. Every time she laughed, I fell harder and harder. We laughed after that. She said she had to get home as she had some errands to run, being new in the neighborhood and all, and I agreed since I had a job application that I had to update. So we exchanged numbers and I parted ways with her. I couldn't believe it. What a great catch. Weeks and months passed on. We continued to talk and eventually began regularly dating. The relationship moved pretty quickly, and it seemed we were truly matched for each other. After about 7 months of dating, I asked her to marry me. I popped the question on the 17th, as that's how many games we played on our first date. She found that so romantic and flew into my arms, screaming yes to the skies. Things were finally looking up. I moved out of my apartment and into her home. I always admired the cozy feel of her 2-bedroom ranch house, something perfect to start a family in. As I was moving my final things in, I noticed how much of a mess I was making with my boxes of stuff and all. I apologized and motioned to the basement to finish moving my things. Her face instantly darted to mine. In a hurried and almost frantic voice, she assured me that she'd take care of the rest of my things and I should relax. It was a bit odd, sure, but she had been through some excruciating sadness throughout her life that her acting a bit off was to be expected. I complied with her request. The next few months were great. We never got tired of each other, and on our wedding day, the kiss we shared on that altar was so special that I firmly believe angels surrounded us and serenaded us with harps and trumpets as our lips connected and sparked so brightly that the entire room was illuminated. She was always leery of me approaching the foreboding basement, sometimes to the point of arguing with me about it, but aside from that, I didn't see any fault in her. One day, she told me she was going to the grocery store. I noted that I wanted some ground beef in order to make some hamburgers for dinner. She smiled at me with that cute, adorable smile I had grown to know and love and headed out. After climbing Burger King's corporate ladder, I had finally attained the position of regional financial manager for the entire state. I was working on some budget information, assessing the costs of all the franchises across the state. It was a long and arduous process, but I was getting just above 6 figures for it, so I wasn't complaining. After each report was fully completed and evaluated, I moved the files to a USB drive so I could upload them to a computer for a corporate meeting the next day. To my horror, with only 3 reports left to finish, the computer crashed. If I didn't finish these reports, I would surely lose my job. I called my wife, asking her if she had another computer or something I could use, but she didn't answer the phone. I rummaged through the house to find something to finish these reports with no avail. Desperate times called for desperate measures, so I took the daring risk of approaching the basement. The handle was unusually cold, and the door was locked. Frustrated and defeated, I slumped to the couch in a depression. That is until I realized that there was a specific flower pot that my wife always guarded with her life. On a hunch, I went to it and found the key at the bottom of the pot under the dirt. As soon as I opened the door, a rancid and tangible odor attacked me like a falling wall from a decrepit building. The entire basement looked as if it was wasting away, a clear contrast to the rest of the house. The heavy layers of dust upon every surface suggested that the basement hadn't been accessed in years. Using my cell phone as a flashlight, I guided myself down the stairs and flicked a light switch. Surprisingly, the bulb still worked. The walls looked molded, the wood was breaking down, the stench was putrid, and the entire place was in disarray. I encountered a strong sense of dysphoria after setting foot in the room, so I quickly searched for some old computer with the intent of running upstairs as quickly as possible. To my luck and astonishment, there was an old laptop and charger in the corner, hidden under some boxes and books. Oddly enough, one of the boxes was one which she brought down after I had first moved in. I had not seen some of this stuff in a long time. Ignoring the nostalgia, though, I seized the computer and charger and raced up to the master bedroom. After giving the laptop a few minutes of power, I booted it up. It was a Windows XP and was quite the technological dinosaur compared to modern equipment, but it had Microsoft Office, so it was acceptable. As soon as Windows finished booting up, a system message appeared on the screen notifying me that news sources had been added to the tagged video cache, and if I'd like to check it out. I had never seen a system message like this before. I know that snooping is generally taboo, but curiosity overcame me. I was taken to a hidden file that required a password to access it. Rolling my eyes, I moved my cursor to the X to get out of the program, when suddenly something typed the password in for me. A bit frightened at this point, I was sucked into the screen. There were two videos entitled HIM.avi and WHY.avi, or him and why. Both thumbnails were pure black. Curious, I clicked on the file entitled him.avi. The video was extremely shaky and grainy. I could barely make out the figure of a man tied to a chair with some sort of a metallic rope. A woman moving as if she was floating on air, not moving a single bone in her body, but yet being able to slowly hover around the room, came into the picture. To my horror, she brought out a knife and started slowly stabbing the man. The man screamed in brutal pain. The man had stopped screaming and was now simply bawling. He occasionally screamed out, "Why?" for that was all he could muster. Each time he did, the woman stabbed him again. She began laughing as the man began vomiting blood. I couldn't watch anymore, so I closed the video. Shaking, I forced myself to click on y.avi. Before the video played, I noticed that this file was modified within the last hour. Almost blinded by fear, I swallowed my apprehension and opened my eyes. This time, there was just the woman. No other person was present. She was facing away from the camera and was speaking in a demonic tone. "Hello. Clearly by now, you know that I'm not the person you thought I was. I'm a sick and twisted woman. I know you're watching this, and I know you're terrified. You sit there and watch, waiting for some happy ending or reasonable explanation as to the events you have just witnessed. There are no special effects here. What you saw was real. You were so desperate for love, you fell in love with a serial killer." The woman turned around instantly, and I recognized the face of my wife. I couldn't even feel emotion at this point. I didn't know what to think. My memory had fallen to pieces. I didn't know where I was, or who I had been, or what I was about to go through. Everything in my life died as I saw the once happy and bubbly eyes that I once saw in my wife become vapid and emotionless. A smile crept over her face, one that makes me quiver in malaise upon the slightest thought of it. This wasn't possession. This wasn't mental illness. This was just evil. So evil. The video continued. It's quite a shame. I really loved you. We had this passion. I made you fall in love with me. I tricked you. I lied to you. And you want to know the best part? I knew you would find out. I couldn't keep the secret forever. Eventually you'd find the key to the basement. Eventually the stench would become too strong. And eventually you'd finally realize that I was never pregnant and that my husband never left. I killed him. I know you're watching this. I just made this video. I know what you've done. I began shaking my head, fearing what I knew I was about to hear. A cold sweat crept upon me as I suddenly felt two eyes bore into the back of my head. I was paralyzed. Those noises you're hearing aren't the pipes. Turn around. I slowly turned and froze as I met the psychotic eyes of my wife. She began to giggle. I don't know what happened after that. I've been told by the police that people heard screams coming from my house during my attempted murder and called the police. I was told by physicians that I was attacked with the sharp end of a screwdriver and that she placed a block of ice on my lap. I was tied to a chair, the same one that was used in the previous video, and I was videotaped. All the videos are now in police custody, and I refuse to see mine. My wife was given the death penalty. I was present at the execution. Her last words were to tell me that she would never leave me, and that she would always know where I was, that she would never give up on my murder, and that she never left a job unfinished. She finished by telling me that I would never be safe. Ever. She survived the first 3 attempts at lethal injection, but died on the 4th. She was smiling, and she was giggling like a schoolgirl before she died. I have been through some extensive therapy, and years later, I have been able to finally overcome the horrific trauma I saw and experienced. I still make 6 figures a year, I've made a good network of friends, and my life has been incredible. I feel accomplished and successful, something I never felt before. I'm now confident. So confident, in fact, that I'm going out on a date tonight with a girl. She's cute too, with this long, dark, flowing hair and vibrant eyes. And there you have it. That was The Dating Game. This is a very interesting story. Now, the original story was a bit darker, so I had to make some modifications just for my viewers, since I didn't want it to be that dark, because it involved some infants as well, and that's not my vibes. So I thought I would just make a few tweaks out of it, but you can always check out the original story online. It's on a Creepypasta website. But I hope you guys enjoyed the story. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye!